Good evening, everyone. Intro about myself. I am Rogeshwaran, cybersecurity analyst. It's my cyber experts company profile and it's my LinkedIn profile. Today's topic is on simulation of WordPress of VA and also develop on the live demo of an WordPress vulnerability assessment. Agenda, introduction to vulnerability assessment, why WordPress is the prime target, understanding WordPress attack surface, lab setup environment, step-by-step VA methodology, real vulnerability demonstration, tools used by attackers, finding and risk analysis, security hardening and fixes, finally question and A. Introduction. What is vulnerability assessment? Vulnerability assessment is the process of identifying, analyzing, and prioritizing security weakness in the system. What happens in VA? Identifying outdated softwares, for example, on plugins, on OS, apps, or any other themes. It was on analyzing on the VA. Today, we have a checking on the plugins and themes also. Second point, finding misconfigurations, debug enabled open directories. Third, detecting weak authentications, no 2FA or weak passwords. And fourth point is on discovering exposed data in APIs, backups, logs, in XML RPC, in PHP, that was on. And finally, on mapping attack surface. It was on what happened in VA. Why WordPress site hacked? In most of the 40% of on global website is on WordPress site. It was on most breaches happened due to the misconfigurations and poor maintenance. Attacker use automated scanning tools, not manual hacking. Common causes. It was on weak passwords and outdated plugins and themes and default insecure configuration. It was on most of the outdated vulnerability in the WordPress sites. And identifying weakness. And VA is about on finding outdated components and misconfigurations in no on CVE. For example, in CVE it was on what the vulnerable finding on that year. Hard was on some year is on, for example, on 2026 they have an any WordPress site have a new vulnerability. It was on assigning the CVE. No exploitation. VA does not any upload cells, damage systems, break functionality, focus on exposure. Exposure, how visible and accessible your weakness also. Tasks, VA versus PT. And VA is an vulnerability assessment is an identifying known weakness and the penetration testing and actively exploit weakness. And we cover wide attack surface, focus on specific targets based on scanning and analysis, based on real attack simulations, provide risk overview, proves real world impact. No intrusive, low risk, intrusive, controlled risk. Now, VA is on scan entire system, finds outdated plugins, misconfiguration known CVE, where are all problems. Pen testing, focus on selected targets, chain vulnerabilities, simulate real attacker behavior. Can actually break this system? Biggest mistake people make thinking VA is on basic pen testing in advanced. Wrong. VA is on foundation, pen testing is on validation. Without VA, you miss obvious issues, pen test become inefficient. Risk difference of VA. VA is unsafe, no system damage, mostly automated. But pen testing is not unsafe. Can break functionality, need permission, controlled execution also. That way PT is interesting, not dangerous. What the difference between vulnerability assessment and pen testings? Now break it clean. Vulnerability assessment is on find problems. Pen testing prove the problem can be exploited. Now simplify with analogy. VA is like a doctor diagnosing your health. Pen testing is like testing how close you are on heart attack. Go deeper. In VA, we can scan the entire system. We identify weakness, misconfiguration, outdated components also, but we don't exploit them. In pen testing, we think like attacker. We chain vulnerability and we prove impact. Now hit the insights of the VA and PT. A report saying you have a vulnerability is not enough. Pen testing answers. Can this actually destroy your system? VA tells you where you are on weak. Pen testing so how you get hacked. It was on difference of VA and PT. Next, simulation setup. In simulation setup, we have a target intentionally vulnerable WordPress websites, environment control lab setup for safe security testing, tools used WP scan on WordPress enumeration and vulnerability detection, and browser manual inspections of pages, logins forms, and exported contents. in WordPress. And WordPress tool was using and intercepting and analyzing the HTTP and HTTPS request and packets and approach. Follow the attacker mindset from recon to finding weakness. Goal: understand how attacker discover exposure step by step. Now we have explained on deep expense of a target vulnerable WP sites. You are not attacking a live protection website. You are using a deliberately vulnerable or outdated lab site to simulate what attacker usually find under poorly maintained WordPress installations. That matter because it keeps the demo ethical, it keeps the session legal, let you the so finding safely. Next, environment controlled lab setup. You need to make the clear explain of a control lab setup. A lot of people hear simulation and mentally jump to an illegal hacking. For lab setup, tell them this is for learning. The system is owned or authorized. The goal is assessment, not damage. And WP scan. It was a tool of an WordPress scan. This is for detecting WordPress version, enumerating plugin themes, identifying users, mapping known vulnerabilities. Browser. Do not underestimate this. Most beginners. A browser alone can reveal and login pages and exposed directories, usernames, plugins, paths, public files also, and finally version clues. A real attacker do not start with a fancy tool. They start with what the site already give away. And next is on the WebSuite. And WebSuite is on the packet request and response capturing tools for an HTTP or HTTPS. It helps inspect requests and responses, headers, cookies captures, parameters, hidden fields, authentication flows. It was an understand the web attack are often about the observing traffic, not normally guessing. Think like attacker. This is the most important part of the slide. You are not teaching them how to run a tool. You are teaching them a workflow. First of all, you want to observe, next enumerate, next identifying weakness, access the exposure, and finally understand impacts. That mindset is what makes the webinar valuable. I explained on some details. Before we start the assessment, let's understand the simulation setup also. We are using an intentionally vulnerable WordPress website in the control lab environment. That means this is not on random public site and this is not unauthorized testing. Next, use WP scan. They help us identifying the WordPress version, enumerate plugins and themes, and detect known weakness. Second, we use a normal browser, and this is important because attacker often learn a lot of just by looking carefully and what the website exposed publicly. Third, use WebSuite. This allows us to inspect requests, responses, headers, cookies, and parameters to better understand how the application behaves. Then tie it together. So the simulation is not about randomly clicking tools. This is about following a real world attacker workflow. First we observe the target, then we enumerate what is exposed, then we identify weakness, and finally we understand how those weakness increases risk. The purpose of the simulation is simple. To help us think like an attacker, so we can defend like a security professional also. Next. WordPress attack surface on WP admin. It was a login panel on brute force credential attacks and plugins and themes and outdated components known vulnerabilities and XML abuse interface and brute force amplification abuse and file upload functionalities, malicious files, web shell risk, APIs, REST APIs, data exposure, user enumeration also. Now we have an what is attack surface? An attack surface and all possible entry point an attacker can interact with login pages or plugins. Everything accessible on it was an attack surface. Next, WP admin. In WP admin, it's publicly accessible, always predictable. Attackers try brute force, try credential stuffing, enumerating usernames, plugins and themes. This is the biggest problem area. Why? Third-party code or poorly maintained in WordPress side and publicly vulnerabilities. That wasn't CVEs or any. For example, it was on file upload bugs on SQL injections or cross-site scripting. One vulnerable plugins it's equal to one full site compromise. It was on WordPress sites. It was on WordPress site. It was on one vulnerable site is on vulnerable on plugin. The full site will be on compromise. Next, XML RMC. Most people don't even know it exists. Attacker use it for amplified brute force and remote actions and DDoS supports on endpoint. Multiple attack possibility. File upload. In file upload, it was on file validation is weak on WordPress side. An attacker upload any malicious file, it was an execute codes. This is often the site was on game over. Next, API. In API exposes users metadata attackers. Enumerate usernames, gather intelligence. More data, easier attack planning. Start with a mindset shift. Most people thinking hacking means breaking into the something hidden, but in reality, attacker use what is already exposed. Attackers attack surface mean every point where your website interact with an outside world, it is inaccessible. It is attackable. Now go to point by point. Take WP admin, they're always predictable. So attacker don't need to find it. They already know it. Plugins and themes. These are third-party code and often poorly maintained. On outdated plugins and your entire site is exposed. Next, XML RPC. Many site owners don't even know it exists, but attacker use it to amplify brute force attacks. It was on XML RPC. Next, file upload. If validation is weak, attacker can upload malicious file, and once that happens, they control the server and APIs. They exposes data, user structures, which help attacker plan their attack more efficiently. Now hit the core message. So understand this. Attacker don't create entry points. They use what you expose. Next. Next, it was on WordPress vulnerability assessment basis. First of all, it's on reconnaissance, on WordPress detections, enumerations, attack surface mapping, directory and file discovery, vulnerability identifications, authentication and access control testing, configuration and misconfiguration review, and request and response analysis, risk analysis, and validation reporting. Now we can start on the record. It was on step one basic target info. It was on domain, IP address, hosting, provider, CDN also. It was on three tools. Who is NS lookup WhatsApp. It was on using on who is. When using on the who is space targeted site. Was using on NS lookup space targeted site. It was on same on WhatsApp. Now we have first we will start on the record. We will identify the domain details and IP address, hosting provider, whatever the CDN or WAP in the place. We also fingerprint the technology stack and confirm if the target is running WordPress. We cannot confidently confirm what is on this site. We don't proceed further. Just to was on the enumeration. It was an enumeration, was on version enumeration, plugin and theme enumeration, user enumeration. WP scan space URL, it was on target site, space enumerate, it was on version and plugin. Now WordPress core version install plugin and theme, registered users. We focus especially on outdated components because they often serve as entry points. User enumeration is an equally important since exposed username reduce attack complexity. Phase 3, it was an attack surfacing mapping, identifying entry points on login panel, WP login.php, WP admin. We identifying all possible entry points, person login interface, or XML or PC endpoints, file upload functionalities, REST API, public directories. Was an XML RPC using the commands curl, exposed, HTTP, target side, and XML RPC, and API. We were checking on the API using that commands. Directory listing. We have any listing on the directory using the WP unit space uploads. Next, phase 4. Phase 4 is on the misconfiguration checks. In security misconfigs, WP config.php sometimes exposed. File permissions in file 644 and folder 755. Next, analyze the security misconfiguration. We check for a directory listing exposure, debug mode enabled, and sensitive file export, big default credential also. Finally, is on improper file permissions. Next, phase 5, automated and manual validations. WP deep scan, it was on having any WP deep scan using on that command on WP space hyphen URL space HTTP, any target name you have on target name proceed space API token and your token. Now I will explain what token you haven't taken. That's website. Automated scan, identifying help vulnerability, and CV manual testing helps verify. However, those vulnerabilities are actually exploitable. Another additional issue like input flaws or missing protection spaces ensure we don't rely blindly on tool. It was on using on pursuit analysis. It was an intercept, login request, form submission, and API calls. Now next is on using on the page, using on vulnerability identification and outdated plugins plus file upload RCE possible on username exposure plus no rate limit and XML RCE enabled, but no protection. It was an abuse the WordPress site. And outdated plugins combined with the file upload functionality may lead to remote code execution also. Exposed username combined with weak login protection may lead to brute force attackers. Finally, on page 7, risk analysis finding vulnerability is not enough. We must evaluate risk also. The access, ease of exploitations, impact on system, whatever the issue can be exploited remotely. Risk analysis, how easy is attack, what is impact, is it remotely exploitable also. Next, page 8. In page 8 is on the reporting. You must include vulnerability name, description, evidence. It was on any finding on it was on using a screenshot or request. What is an impact? This on recommendations. Now, eighth phase is finally we document everything is structured. Each finding must include vulnerability name, description, proof of evidence, and impact recommended fix. It was on the recommended system of an EA. Next, we have a setup on the lab setup, set up the Kali Linux, outdated and upgraded the Kali and install the WP scan. Now demo time. First of all, we going on the install the Kali. Now we going on go to on the virtual box. I have installed on already in Kali Linux. Now we have on starting the Kali Linux. Now Kali as an open. Or any new installers for Kali. First of all, we have an update and upgrade the Kali. Command is an ODK update. Using the command to update your Kali. Next, to make it upgrade. This command also used on the upgrade your Kali. To make it full upgrade. Command is also full upgrade your Kali machine. So we are using another EA. First of all, phase one is on record. We have been using on the who is tool. Now we have one who is tool, but I have one already have one some WordPress site, so I have one type that WordPress site name. Okay, now we have one who is tool is one domain name and reset address and registered domain area also registered URL. Because I was clear and updated and place and date. It was unregistered expert date. This was unregistered in what site you have and by that was an email and phone. Okay, next using on the NS lookup. NS lookup space NS lookup. Okay, we have NS lookup. First is some unreachable, so we are using only next D and data dot is okay. This also one talking on next to we are using only WordPress WordPress dot We have installed the WordPress. Okay, wait 2 minutes. WordPress tracer has installed. We have an using that all tools. It was on normal pen tester. I have been using on all tools. Have an account. So I have been using on the any work possibilities on any tools. We have been using all tools. So I have been working on who is in the lookup, dick, WhatsApp, WAF also. So wait a minute. Now we can install the so what tracer dot space. Wait a second. Still the tracer has done success rate, but bootstrap is on countries on Germany. So you have noticed that some big tools and we started it was on some different signs. So analyzing algorithm using on many tool on record. Next cases to WordPress detection using the WP scan, advanced WP scan tool. Okay, now we have an using on the WP scan. Yes, right. Yes, HTTP using on targeted site. Mm, yes, no, no, date. Okay, we have one scan in the trace space, updating the database, and we have checking on. Wait a second, they have one scanning and updating the database. If you scan, you have one scan about it, you have software trace data. Okay, next we are using on the curl command. In curl command is a very important on the WordPress. Save. Okay, the HTTP is some success rate, okay, and date and type of content and connections and where it's coding. PHP version also. Next, we are checking on the HTTP trace errors post WPBSS and VTAG and X-Rate speed catch platform hosting and panel Hutch panel server HTM. I'm using on the curl command to using on I. Next, we can using on the curl I trace error space WP. We were checking on the login PHP login dot PHP. Wait a second. Okay. Next we are checking on your PHP 302. Okay. And next command using on save but WP login. Next we are using on the WP admin. Okay. Now you use the WP admin command. Next we have one using on another command. You have WP content. WP content. Okay, it was a normal WordPress reduction. Next, we are using on the versions and plugins and themes also. Okay, next we are checking on the WordPress plugins versions and themes versions and was on checking commands. We're using the WP scan URL http space. Now enumerate VP V was on plugins and themes. It was on so VP and now We have been checking on the WordPress plugins and scan was aborted. So let's say so that name we have one. Okay, now we have been checking. Site has some run, but only we have a scan test command. Okay, the site have an any problem, so I have an explainer command on the live section. Okay, next we are using only enumerate view scanning on the user only. So we have a WP scan same, but you change on the view. Next, you have a check on the author of the site. Yes, you have an WP scan, HTTP space, using on the author. Equal to 1. Now you have a check on what is an author. Next, enumerations aggressive. Next, you have an using on the aggressive scan in the plugins and themes and checking. Now you have an using the WP scan and URL and targeted site. Now you have an using the enumerate. Now we have been checking on the aggressive scan and AP, next AT, next CB, next TBE, next U, finally M. Now you have been checking on an aggressive scan. Next phases for choose an attack surface check. We have been using an attack surface commands. So it was on phases 4 using the curl command. Curl x host http is dot space dot space. Next we have an using on the XML RPC. XML RPC dot PHP. Because I'm using on the okay, now we have an XML person scanning on the XML person method response alt value struct number. So XML RPC have a scan. Next using on the curl command on the curl target site http http dot space. Next http dot space. We have been using another on WP JSON. Next WordPress v2 command. Next using and checking on the users. Okay. Next we have been using an simple way and using on the site. For example, we have an XML RPC. Next using on the WP JSON. So next we have one using that command on WP content in blue and Okay, that command also I'm finished. Next we are using on the WP to okay, next we have I'm using on the login.php WP login.php also. Okay. Next we have a checking on the phase 5 option directory checking and file directory. So using on the tool is under Go Buster. Okay, now Go Buster we have installed. Now some Go Buster tool we have installed that. Wait a few seconds, the Go Buster tool I have installed. So now you are using on the Go Buster tool. Okay, the blue color is for when Go Buster tool has been installed. So checking on the directory user now use on the target site. Now we have taken on the API token. So we have one Firefox and checking on API token. WP scan. Okay, this tool also an automated tool checking on your site and what site is unsecure or vulnerable. So we have using on the WP scan. Okay, this was on your we can check in on the WP scan site. Okay, next we have moving on WP scan. Okay, token. Now we have a login. Okay, now WS can was on API token. So we have a copy that on the notepad. We have one copy that. Now we have one save it to API token. API token. So we have one using that. Now going on all Linux. So checking on the API token in WordPress 65. So I have an using text and now we have an copy that. Now we have an using API token. So for directory we have an using on the API token. Next you have an now you have a tracer using on hyphen W user char tab one word list. Checking on the the weapon use on the common.txt. So I got the common.txt. So I'm using on the next directory search is on directory search. Okay, now that is fine installed. Wait some second. Directory search have been installed. So using on directory search. Using on target side. Okay, now the directory search on scanning. So wait some second. So wait a second, the directory search on scanning. They haven't taken many time. If in the base area you have any target side, you have a different shade that color it was on any. So we have been using on directory search. Next, www index.php. So we have been using on the pb admin. Next is here as an admin index.php. Have many searches. So wait a second, they have been scanning one more. If I have been save, you have been using on the S to type and you have been save that data. but I don't have a data, so I haven't quite that session. So next you have on page 6 on vulnerability scanning. Now using on the WP scan tool, WP scan URL http is yes. Now we using on our API token. Now paste your token. So you have an already say what side you have an going and take your API token. So now you have an paste your API token. Wait a second, they have one scanning. Wait a second, they have an aggressive method, so we have an aggressive scan. So now we have an scanning the WP scan API. Okay, the plan for entry and request done and request remaining on 23. Now we have an finish date and request done and captures request on 6. It was one using on the API token. Next you have an vulnerability scanning is on Dicto tool. By using on the Dicto, we have an install the Dicto tool. At a second, the tool have an installed. So we have an using an Dicto tool. We have an targeted have an scan. So it does these tools. Now we have an using on Dicto space. It's have an using on where we need to have an section on the tool. Okay, the tool have an scanning and installation of the targeted IP and host name and the port what port have an open. So we have an even scanning on Dicto. So it was on page 6. Next you go on page 7 and page 8 and page 9. It was on final. Now you have an it wasn't completed. I haven't go on next page 7. Okay, next we are going on the page 7. It was on author and brute force checks. Now you have an using on the WP scan URL HTTP using type on your targeted site. You have an any users text. We have an scan. Next we have any passwords txt file. It was an aborted, so I have no any user text files and password text. So I have an aborted. So when any you call Linux, it was an ISO. So you have an using on Windows 64 call Linux. You have an using on that user txt file and password text and default is they have one saved. So next we have using on the HTTP request analysis. In HTTP request analysis, we have an use on the BCBUZZ tool. So next install the website. So wait a few seconds, the WebSuite have installed, but the WebSuite have is only not for an VA, it was an VA PT only. So I have an open it and how to the tool have an interface. So wait a second, I haven't shown the WebSuite interface. Okay, now you have an open it the WebSuite. The WebSuite have an open, accept the temporary budget memory and click on next. This WebSuite default start button. The WebSuite have an open on few seconds. So the website have an user open, you have an using one proxy and intercept on off dashboard targets. Our website is a very useful tool and you have an using on Zap proxy also. The Zap proxy also manual and automated to have an scan the WordPress site. So we have an quite the website. So it was finished the final you have an report. So you have an using on that command of an the API tokens. So results.txt you have an save it on your results. So you have an result, you have an API token settled that all result have an save it on -o space result.txt. They have an save it on the call index. So the VA demo have an can exit now. You have an exit the Linux have an shutdown. Okay. So the demo have an issue. If any question have an put it on the comment section. The admin have an reply on the comment section on YouTube channel. So it was on land at BCBUZZ.io. This site have an webinar sessions. So you have any sessions have an any doubt I have an cybersecurity related. So you have a checking the already classes you have a checking. Now thank you.